Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to lecture 58. In this last week we are discussing various aspects for the self management and development. In last few lectures we have discussed stress management and time management, and we have talked about improving yourself so that you can deliver more for your work. And today we are going to discuss few aspects of the good practices whichever is there and which have been documented in various forums and various publications. So, these practices, before I come to the good practices, I would like to talk about the term good practices and best practices, and then I will discuss some examples of the best practices, and then we will talk about a little bit about that how and what makes you delivering excellence for the urban development. Now, practice, what is good and best, and now this is a very relative term. You see that the good and the best. Now, something which is best now after few years may not be best, because when the technology changes, when the time changes, the policy changes, even the people's aspirations and requirement changes, that particular practice may not stay for very longer time. So, one criteria for determining good and best practice is definitely the time. So, some practice which is good now or best now, that may not be good after few decades. So, time is one decider to make a good and best practice. The second decider for good and best practice will be definitely the mandates. Now, for any mandates and norms. Now, the basic difference between mandates and norms are standardized prescription for making any urban infrastructure or governance, and mandates are the instruction given by the policy or the program. For example, in JNURM or in Amrut mission, you have several mandates and reforms which are to be done by the urban local bodies. Now, if these mandates and norms are maintained in a project properly and with expected quality control is done, so we may consider that definitely it is a good practice, because executing an urban infrastructure project, an urban management project is not only the matter of money, it is the matter of money, time, the people, and integration of the social and political issues. So, therefore, maintaining mandates and the norms is definitely tends to a good practice. And one more thing I would like to mention here, that any practice whatever you do at your working level, that should be accepted by your end user. So, acceptance by the end user, for our case it is the citizens is another criteria for making any practice good. And another criteria for making a practice good or best definitely is the real improvement in service. So, if we find that there is a real improvement in service which could be measured through a span of time, and that definitely accounts to a good practice. So, to brief, the compliance with the mandates and the norms, acceptance by the citizens and the end user, and the real improvement of the quality of the service or the quantity of the service which is measurable in a span of time is a criteria for the good practice. So, why I am discussing this? Because there is no concrete definition of a good practice and the best practice, but definitely after some time the good practice may not be that much good, because the people's acceptance and the requirement may change. So, that time we might have to change the level of service for the urban infrastructure. So, there are few practices or the work which even after few decades also remain good for the time, for those time. So, those are called as a best practice, as we can understand. So, best practice is a practice which is best in course of time temporarily, and also which is best in the contemporary time, because it touches the mandates and the norms, it touches the acceptance of the end user, the citizens, and also it shows the real improvement in the service delivery in terms of the quantity and quality both. So, therefore, the good practice and best practice and therefore is identified like that. It is not a matter of subject which is based on my perception or anybody's perception about the good and best practice. A practice is measured always on the benchmark of the performance. So, that performance says that whether a practice is good or best. So, if it is a good for a long term, for few decades, which is tested for the time, definitely it is a best practice. Now, when the major urban reform and the program came in last 10-20 years, we have found that several practices in India was really good in terms of our socio-economic condition, and some of the good practices are documented also. So, I am going to show some of the good practices which is documented by the Government of India under National Institute of Urban Affairs. So, some good examples I will show. Some of the practices will be related to transportation, some of the good practice will be like water and sanitation or solid waste management, or some of the good practice could be related to heritage conservation. So, that I am going to speak about that, but very briefly, so that you get some idea, and later on you can go into details. So, this is one good practice in urban transportation. You know that the intermediate transportation in India is a subject which is really not given much care in Indian cities, and especially the small and medium cities are most vulnerable in this regard. Any small and medium cities you go, you will find that small and medium cities are full of polluting vehicles like auto rickshaws and other intermediate public transport. Sometimes small buses are there or small public transports are there. Now, this case, this is a city of Alwar. You know, Alwar is a not a very big city, it is there in Rajasthan. So, what they did, they scrapped all the existing vehicles which were polluting and which was not giving a affordable and safer service to the citizen. So, through a community development, they brought a system of a new transportation which is Euro compliant, that means not less polluting, and which can accommodate 6 to 7 persons, and this is done with the loan from the private bank. So, there is no investment from the government, and it created lot of employment. As we took the information from the compilation from the best practices from NIUA, it is 3,000 plus employment generated, and there is a gradual transformation from the earlier practice by the driver in continuing the polluting vehicles to the new practice of registering in the new vehicle and continuing that. So, this is the transformation which happened in a small city, and so this is a unique example of alternative and sustainable public transportation, because small and medium towns might not having a capacity to run a full course of MRTA system or BRTA system. So, this kind of approach and this kind of action which is contextually and locally tested as a sustainable mode of transportation is very good service and very good practice what we have seen. So, many other small cities and towns, you can think about it, you can visit this place and see, and definitely you can do something like that. Next, I would like to show in this regard another example. This is called Fazilika Eco Cab. Fazilika is a small town in Punjab. So what they did, they thought that the like getting rickshaws always may not be possible when you are not near the rickshaw stand. If you are in home or if you are in between two rickshaw stands, you may not get the rickshaws always. So they tried to bring a system of dial up rickshaw service, so that you just dial or you give the information through online media and you will get a rickshaw in front of your doorstep. So this is kind of a service which is given, which is created at a very small town called Fazilika. So if a small town like Fazilika can do this kind of service, many others can do similar services, because the rickshaws, e-rickshaws and the auto rickshaws are one of the backbone of the Indian intermediate public transportation and the last mile connectivity in Indian cities. So therefore this is a very good practice, you can definitely refer this. Now this is another very important case study. Non-revenue water is a very important subject in water supply distribution. Now you know, if you are a technical person, you are an engineer, you know that when you design a water supply system, minimum 20% is the non-revenue water which you consider during a water supply distribution system, and many times these are unaccounted for, and the people who are paying for the water, sometimes they are overcharged because of this unaccounted for non-revenue water. So in the city of Surat, the Surat Municipal Corporation, what they did, they made a separate cell of NRW, that is non-revenue water, and that cell made a detailed study with all leakage and the possible loss in the distribution system, in the water distribution system, and after that they came out with a strategy to reduce the leakage, to reduce the wastage, etc. And it has definitely given them an advantage of getting much more water and also more revenue from the water, less number of wastage, less number of water leakage in the water supply system. So that has been possible due to giving this as a very importance and priority, and creating a cell and making them enable to carry out the work. You can see in the picture that how they have carried out the work. I am not going into details, you can show from the guidelines or the publications I will share. So this is how they have done this activity, this leakage mapping and leakage repairs, and the whole mapping of the leakage, so that they can identify the possible areas where the leakage and the losses are going on, and they can reduce that by using specific strategies. The next case is like another very important issue, which is the metering of the water supply system. When the UGDM program came in 2004, you must be knowing that you are involved in the urban governance for last few years. So you might have seen that the metering of the water supply is very difficult job for urban local bodies. Various concerns are there. One is there is a strong non-acceptance of metering and the eagerness to pay for water supply in all the citizens, common citizens in India, number one. Number two, the installation of the metering sometimes becomes a kind of a risky job, because sometimes it is stolen, sometimes it is altered. So many issues are involved in the metering. So what the city of Bangalore, what they did the metering in such a way so that it can do the purpose through a bulk metering method. They installed it in a strategic location, so that they could have a vigilance on that, and they use the ICT applications so that they can capture the real time data, and they use that information from the meters and use the same for analysis and the decision making for further distribution and further supply of the water. So that is the best part what they did. Instead of individual metering, they made bulk metering, number one. Number two, in the strategic location. Number three, application and integration of the ICT application, and number four, the using the real time data into further analysis and the policy formation. The next case study I will share is the city of Trichy. What they did a mechanism by which they they could manage the community toilet by the community involvement. Now, whenever we do a public toilet, usually public toilets are outsourced to the private organizations or outsourced to NGO, but sometimes there is a possibility that it is not maintained because the private organizations are running and maybe vigilance is less from the municipal side. If it is given to the community, community can take care a lot because community own that particular infrastructure. That is what is done by the Trichy through a community organizations and community based organizations. They have given the responsibility to the community, and that particular mechanism has earned a better maintenance of the community toilet, public toilets, and better hygiene and sanitation in the whole area. And not only that, it has brought up participation and the employment generation. So, this is a very good example of involving citizens and running a public infrastructure in a better way. So, it is a public people partnership you can see which is running in the city of Trichy. The next case study I would like to share, that it is in the city of Pune. It is a PPP project. In this project, what they did, they made a partnership with another organization called Swachh, and through that partnership they tried to accumulate all the waste pickers in the city. You know that waste pickers of the city are resource in our city. So, and so far they were not given much recognition in the solid waste management paradigm. So, what they did, they identified and recognized these people and tried to mobilize and integrate the function of the waste pickers in a better way, in a systematic way, so that the waste collection becomes as per the standard, as per the benchmark, and after that it has been doing well, it has been running fantastic. So, that is the thing what they did. So, it improves the door to door collection and without spending finance from the public fund, because it is done through a PPP mode, and also it has generated lot of employment. And also I would like to mention social empowerment, because earlier the rack pickers were not recognized. Now, rack pickers are waste pickers and rack pickers are recognized as a very responsible citizen which is doing a fantastic job for the citizens of the city. So, you have seen that this is a better practice. Next, I would like to share the urban conservation initiatives in the world city of Ahmedabad. I told before that there are many cities in India which are historically developed, and many of them have historical remains, heritage structure, tangible and non-tangible heritage elements, but very few of them actually did a better planning for the heritage management. Ahmedabad city is one of them who did a very good work in the heritage management. What they did through urban conservation, awareness, restoration, heritage work, and then setting up of city museum, revival of tankas or the heritage elements, they made the total heritage plan of the core city or the old city, and because of that now they are able to attract the people, the tourists over that area, and that heritage work and other elements are acting as a pull factor for the tourist. So, in the picture you can see that the heritage works and the buildings after restoration. Okay. So, heritage could be an asset for your city if it is properly planned and properly managed. Another example I would like to share with you for the heritage conservation, when there is a heritage structure which is fragmented or scattered in a regional setting or regional areas, even in the rural areas, it is very difficult for a particular technical group to collect data and make a mapping for the heritage structure. So, in a city of Mednapur in West Bengal, what they did the mapping of heritage structure in a regional scale through the community involvement. So, they used community to get those data properly, to identify the heritage structure. Definitely the technical team was there, institutional support was there, and they used the GIS based application to make the mapping. So, for any planning, once the mapping is done, it can definitely help for the better planning and better management. So, this is done through the involvement of the community, and community helped as a source of the wisdom, source of the information, source of the data, and source of the support and the engagement. So, in your area, if you have heritage structure in the city level or regional level, definitely you should involve the community so that you can get the success. So, these are few best practices I have shown from just few. There are many best practices. I would like to request all of you to go through the guidelines and the documented cases. I will share many more case studies in the reading materials, so that you can understand that. And I would like to hear from you that what kind of practices you are doing at your urban local bodies or the development authorities, and what is, how it is distinct and different from the other practices. That will be very good if you can share all those practices in our online forum. So, having said that, let me come to the point about the excellence. Now, why the word excellence comes in the good and best practice? So, I have talked about the good practice and best practice. I have told you that best practice always is a good practice which is tested through the course of time, and excellence is a word which is used for the urban management also to denote a continuation of the good and best practice by a particular organization for a longer period of time. So, good practice and best practice could be there for a particular sector. For example, as I have shown you that particular municipality might have done a very good work in water supply system, but maybe that ULB has failed in e-governance. Maybe some other urban local bodies, they have done very good in e-governance, but they have failed in solid waste management. But excellence, the concept of excellence is a good practice in all sector. So, if we have various sectors like these, sectors in urban development like basic infrastructure, services, housing, livelihood, socio-economic development, etc., etc. You know that we have discussed about 74th Amendment Act. So, there are various sectors which is there for the urban local bodies, which they are mandated to do that. So, every sectors, if they perform in a better way than the earlier time, whatever they did 5 years back, now they are doing in a better way. Their performance is better in terms of their productivity, in terms of their acceptance to the people, in terms of their public image. That becomes a subject of excellence. So, excellence is something really little bigger, and excellence is a practice. It is not a destination. Excellence is a journey. It is consisting various good practices and the best practices for an organization. So, here the message is that you should practice excellence, and excellence can be possible if you practice it at the individual level and the organization plus team level. So, practicing excellence is very important in organizations, especially those are involved in urban management and urban governance. Now another word comes in the excellence is that after some time, when people are involved in the urban management and the urban governance, they are doing so many works and so involved, they do not have time to compare their work with the other works or what others are doing in the other part of the country or other part of the world. So, is it possible to compare your practice with others so that you can judge yourself whether you are doing right or not? So, that is also possible to bring a fairly better competitive environment in the practice of the urban management. So, those kind of references from the others practice in our own country and the international scenario is also possible, and that is also much more beneficial sometimes to deliver good and best practice. And the term we use for that excellence is reflective learning. So, in the next lecture we will discuss about how to bring excellence as a practice, as a habit in the organization and at the individual level to and how reflective learning can be used for bringing excellence. So, that is what will be the lecture module for the next lecture. So, with this I would like to conclude today's lecture. Today we have discussed various best practice and the good practices. We have told you that good practices definitely satisfies the mandates, norms, the public acceptance, the performance in terms of the service delivery, etc. But definitely the best practice is those which is not only good practice, which stays for the country, stays for the people for the long period of time, few decades, and it is accepted by the time. So, that is the best and good practice, and in reality you can bring this best and good practice for all the sector for all the time, and that becomes a subject of excellence, and you can definitely practice that. So, next lecture we are going to discuss reflective learning and the excellence in the organization. So, thank you very much for attending this lecture.